I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I don't really know if I can delineate dance from my life. It's like, it's so ingrained in all of us. I think if I were to pinpoint things that I do think it's made me used to rigor in my life. It's made me used to discipline. It's made me used to being systematic. It's made me used to thinking fast, working fast. So there's not a delineation with dance in my life. I think it's done everything good for me. Yeah, It's been a great, it's my first love.
Very, very heartfelt. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. And today we have an amazing panel of Emmy-nominated choreographers. My name is Anthony Marciona, and I have been a professional actor, dancer, singer, working member of Screen Actors Guild, AFTRA, and Actors Equity for over 50 years. I'm also a full voting member of the TV Academy in the choreographer, dancer, and performing artist categories. I chair the SAG-AFTRA Los Angeles Local Dance Committee. I'm on the LGBTQ+ seasoned performers and other committees. And as a national board alternate member, I'm always advocating for dancers and performers as long as I can still do a triple time step. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our panel of Emmy-nominated choreographers, an esteemed group of talented, experienced, and extremely fun peers from what I know. First, we have Christian Vincent, nominated recently for The Porter, which is an important series about railway workers in the world's first Black union. He also choreographed for The Shape of Water, Salt and Pepper the movie, and 500 Days of Summer, which we worked together on many moons ago with director Mark Webb and the actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Next, we have Christopher Gattelli, nominated for Schmigadoon, which, if you haven't seen this, it is a hilarious send-up of Brigadoon and all the old-fashioned Broadway musicals, as well as choreographing for Isn't It Romantic, King and I, Newsies, and this amazing No Dames tap dance number from Hail Caesar, which I play over and over. And last but not least, I'm happy to introduce my friend Jillian Meyers, nominated for Zoey's Extraordinary Christmas, which has one of the most versatile casts I've seen in a long time. She's known as well for Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist, Hollywood Stargirl, and La La Land, which we worked together with choreographer Mandy Moore and director Damien Chazelle many moons ago. So that's our esteemed panel. Congratulations for your nominations, everyone. I'm going to start with the simple question. Whoever wants to jump at it first. Everyone wants to know, how did you get your start? Does anyone want to chime in first? Jillian. Oh, sorry, Kristen.
Ladies first. Jillian, go ahead.
Ladies first.
Okay. This is maybe a great moment to also say I am one half of the nomination for Zoey's Extraordinary Christmas. I was a co-choreographer with Mandy Moore, who is also my mentor, which really actually, segues nicely into beginnings. I met Mandy when I first moved to LA when I was 18. And I have, she's been my teacher since then, which is over now half my life. And I would say, yeah, she's my biggest mentor, and very thankfully, from my teacher to being her assistant to being her associate to then being her co-choreographer. It's really such a beautiful relationship that I'm so thankful for. So that's kind of the later half. But how did I get my start? I mean, dancing in the studio in Portland, Oregon, and then dance, moved to LA, want to do everything, tried to do a lot of it, and then kind of been transitioning from dancer to choreographer in various different situations, but a lot of them alongside Mandy. So even La La Land, I was her assistant. So, and and then we just keep growing and doing, right? So.
Yeah, and kudos to Mandy as well, amazing choreographer, and I'm glad to work with her too. Christian, how about you?
I think like most of us, in a small town in Windsor, dance studio, dance conventions were the way I found out about the industry. I love music videos, so I wanted to dance like most of us, like with Madonna and with Prince. And so it was music videos, watching those, going to dance conventions, going to Butler University, graduating from there. And then I moved out to LA to pursue my dance dreams, which turned from dance dreams to acting dreams and choreography dreams. So I think it's just been that progression of being in the industry. and keeping at it. I think for me, it's been really about keeping at it and keeping, I went back to school, got my master's in dance. It's about continuing education so that I continue to have more to offer when I wasn't that little 22-year-old anymore. So I think it's staying in the industry, but it's been a winding road, but just staying in it and keeping and doing and praying and praying.
That's a great point, Christian. I mean, a lot of it is persistence, and it's great that you enlighten us that we're always learning too, and the more you can bring to your role as a choreographers now, only makes that greater and passes on to the next generation. So kudos to you. Christopher, how about you?
Gosh, we're all kind of similar. I grew up in a small town outside of Philadelphia, did, dancing school for years and competitions and all that good stuff. And one of the teachers at one of the conventions said, "Oh, we're having scholarship auditions for Alvin Ailey. You should come. You have some potential." And being close to New York, I went and I got a scholarship to Ailey. And I was kind of on that track for a while. But where the studios were located, they looked down over Broadway. And I was kind of like at the bar, looking at the marquees going, "Oh, God, I bet that's so much fun too, though." So I kind of shifted gears and I kind of started auditioning for Broadway and started working there. And then the person who kind of changed my life was, his name was Chris Chapman. He choreographed Guys and Dolls, the Faith Prince, Jerry Zach's version. And we were in rehearsals one day and we didn't have a great run through. And he said, "If you can go home and give me, if you can give me a reason that there isn't an intention for one step, I'll give you a dime." So I went home and I went through the whole show and I was like, "This is what choreography is. I absolutely get this." And it completely changed my trajectory. And from then on, I just wanted to choreograph.
Wow, that's awesome. You mentioned your studios that you were studying looked over Broadway. Were you studied at Phil Black by any chance?
I took from Phil Black, but it was the Minskoff studios actually. That they're not even there anymore.
They're not there anymore.
Yeah, it was when Ailey was back at the Minskoff. Yeah.
I remember, just a quick aside, at Phil Black's, he was on 50th and Broadway and had big glass windows that looked over Broadway. And he used to say, "Go out there and look at that, because most of you won't be able to perform there, but at least you can see it." He was from the old school of teachers who were like, he had a stick in his hand, would throw it at you. That wouldn't fly these days, but
nope.
he kept us inspired, and it was like we were so determined to work on Broadway. We were going to get there and not just pressed against the glass looking out. So it reminded me of that. What a great story, though. So when I know you sort of covered what made you transition. Let's start with Christopher, since I'm talking. Or what made you make the transition from dancer to choreographer? How did that actually happen?
Well, during that time, like as I was performing and I when I did Guys and Dolls and actually did Cats for a while, and in New York they do these benefits for Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, and I did a piece for Cats. I was like, we have a lot of great dancers in the show. We should do like a big dance number. So they were like, we'll do it. So I was like, okay. So I did it, and it went over pretty well. But then the organizers of Broadway Cares said, we'd really love you to choreograph our opening number for the next one. And I was like, it's great. And and then Rosie O'Donnell happened to be in the audience that show, and it was when her TV show was on the air, and Jerry Mitchell was actually her resident choreographer at the time, and he had to leave to go do the Full Monty, and she was like, they needed a choreographer, and they were like, well, what about that guy that did that number? It was funny, it was good, and so I did an audition for her show, and I literally was like right into the frying pan. I had never done anything. I'd never worked with cameras, never did anything. I assumed it was going to be kind of the trajectory of like assistant, dance cap. I had this plan in mind, and it was like, nope, go. So, but it was the most amazing experience because she was so lovely to work with and generous, and I did my homework, and I was on there for like 3 or 4 years, and we got to go to Disney and do things like live, and so that started the ball rolling essentially.
That's awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS is an amazing foundation that gives back to the Broadway community. And they also do Broadway Bears. Did you ever work on that? And
I'm too modest. I would step up on the plate and go, I'm good.
Well, you look like you'd have a great body for it, but I was asked once, and I'm like, no, I don't think they want to see an old man, and they'd rather see the hot youngins. What about you, Jillian? How did you transition? I know you were assisting Mandy a lot, and how did you make the actual transition to, or decide, did you want to dance as well, or?
I mean, I still really love to dance. So I actually performed earlier this year at New York City Center, but now probably, things that I'm a part of creating, but yeah, it is a bit more traditional, I guess, in that sense, because I kind of ended up, I think, a lot of jobs as a dancer then would be kind of quickly folded in as an assistant, I think, because I'm curious about that, and I always, I don't know, I love creating, and so that kind of, it wasn't something I actively was seeking, but it happened, just kind of kept happening, so as well as assisting Mandy, assisted a lot of other choreographers over time, like Michael Rooney, Wade Robson, Brian Friedman, just over time. And what a gift to be an assistant is really to see someone's process. And I learned so much. I mean, I even assisted Ryan Heffington, who is also a nominated choreographer. He's not on panel with us today, but it really would blow my mind each time as an assistant to see someone's way and how they were all wildly different, and all of them work and are correct, because it's an art form, and that was so valuable, I think, as a young maker doer, just to see in a demonstration how process can look so many different ways. And so I think then going from an assistant to associate, and also along the side starting to cultivate my own choreography as well, in between projects. And it's kind of been a pretty steady course, so definitely more focused on choreography now. But if somebody asks me to dance and I'm excited about it, I will still dance.
That's correct. So, I think it's in our souls, right? To move and everything. You remind me of a quick. I love you guys, and it always reminds me of some great stories of choreographers. You mentioned Ryan Heffington. Him and Zach Woodley had hired me, and we were all going to be drag queens, and I've never done that before, but there's a certain style in choreography, especially now, like RuPaul has raised the bar for drag dancers, and then the producers were there on the set, and the producers said, you know what, the network thinks this is too risque for children, and they canceled the episode. So I missed my big opportunity to do drag with Ryan and Zach, but it reminded me of that story. Yeah. Christian, tell us about your transition.
It's funny. I think growing up,
I didn't mean to clarify. I was talking about drag, and I didn't mean that transition.
Oh, okay.
Transition from dance. Just to clarify, which is fine.
I think, I always looked at dance and choreography hand in hand, like growing up. So I really started growing up choreographing my own little, competition dances in my basement. Right. So, and then when I was in college, I would choreograph in college, and then I'd have it was a soccer team had asked me to choreograph, for their games in Indianapolis when I was a butler. And moving out to LA, I think the goal was always to eventually choreograph. I always wanted to do everything. I wanted to choreograph, I wanted to act, I wanted to sing. And I think a lot of times people think that when you say that, you're supposed to be pigeonholed where you're only supposed to be able to do one thing. And I even know as an actor, I was told, you can't tell people you dance. You can't tell. So I never abided by that. And I have always done what I love, which is I've danced. And yes, I was Madonna's dance captain when I was on tour with her. And I assisted Michael Rooney, which gave me a lot of insight as far as how to work quick and fast for camera, and how to see pictures on camera. And I think really when I would call myself more of I would always say a choreographer. I never called myself a choreographer, so to speak. Even when I was dancing, it wasn't until I really felt like it was legitimized. So I think when I started choreographing, I was acting on a film, and they asked me to choreograph a scene. I was on a show called Noah's Ark, and we did that. And then in Canada, they asked me to be on a reality show called Canada Sings, and to be a personality but choreograph. Mm-hmm. So I've always looked at that part as part of my dance world. So it has kind of always been there, but as far as being recognized by others, I guess it depends on, you've got to have that big job by your name for others, So I would say it's been years of me choreographing, but it's been recently that I guess I've been recognized by others as a choreographer.
And kudos to you. You brought up something I think very important about not pigeonholing yourself. Anyone growing up in New York, you had a dance, sing, and actor. You weren't even considered for things. Sometimes even, you don't do acrobats as well, or so, and I remember making the transition coming out here, and it was, don't tell me you do musical theater or you dance or sing. And I was like, well, I'm going to be a character actor and go that way. But now it's come full circle where they're like, oh, now you can come out, so to speak. Yeah. And they realize, wow, it's not being unfocused, it's being multi-talented, which is a whole, Renaissance person. So I'm glad you brought that up.
It's being authentic, because I think when you try to hide that part of yourself, it really does a disservice to you, and it doesn't really show everything that you are. So I think it's being as authentic as possible.
Right. And you'll notice in a lot of shows, second seasons, all of a sudden, this actor or this actress was on Broadway or something, it doesn't be positive. And the lead on that was, won a Tony. And then all of a sudden there's musical numbers in the scene. And it's great. It's being your true self and like utilizing all your talents that only can help a production or a show. On that note, Christian, let me ask you, so The Porter is not a musical,
no,
right? So can you describe how you incorporated dance into the storyline and how you worked with the actors? And if you had any, if any actors that don't have any natural rhythm or training, what was that process like? If you can tell us a little bit about
this. This project was a godsend because it was a period piece, and it dealt with basically the Harlem Renaissance in Canada. So I'm Canadian. It's really about my ancestors.
Wow.
Canadian and American, because both my mother and father are both Canadian and American. And it was, my hometown was in this series. So you're talking about the beginnings of what we all do, which is jazz. And you're talking about the people who started these dance forms that all of us are choreographing today, but never get the credit. So I had the opportunity to show the beginnings of where all of jazz and tap, the beginnings of hip hop, all of it started in the 1920s. So in taking this on, it was research. It's knowing that the Charleston didn't start till 25. The Lindy Hop didn't start till 27. It was knowing a lot of history, and also trying to, shine a light on a culture. So the dancing is not separate. It wasn't a musical, but dancing is not separate from the Black culture. And really, it's not separate from the American culture. Mm-hmm. It is integrated in our walk. It's integrated in especially Black life. So it was not, I won't even go, there were many challenges, but at the end of the day, I feel that I got an opportunity. There was enough dance to show that. Whereas, because this was not a show about dance. So I think fellow choreographers would understand, just to get substantial choreography on the screen is a feat. To get it filmed the way that you want it filmed and edit it the way you want it filmed, it's been a feat. All of it. So it's for all of us to get our work on screen where it looks like we want to. We're like, it's a godsend. So for this, it's not a dance film, but it's about it's basically it's in Canada, but it's about the beginnings of jazz dance in the 1920s. So it is an integral part of the culture of this movie. And working with the actors, I had some really talent, like Lauren Lott, Juliet, Amara, and Amel Amin all had dance experience, all different levels. And we know as choreographers, when you first go in, you have to test the waters with the actors to see temperament and how they feel. You know, it's like a balancing act until they know you and trust you. And I go in there like, happy to be here, easy to work with. I want to make you beautiful and comfortable. And once they know me, it's not even like, once they know me, they know my intention, and it was fun. And we have a good time. But for all of us, it's always like, okay, when you're working with actors, you're like, okay, what's this personality going to be like? Are they going to be receptive to dance? Are they going to be nice? Are they going to be? So in this group, it was a wonderful experience to, I'll say honestly, represent Black culture, American culture, and hopefully in a beautiful and creative and intelligent manner. Yeah,
that's awesome. What a great experience. And I know working, with actors who haven't danced, or it's not one of their talents, they're very apprehensive coming to it. But it's great, and part of your job, I guess, is making them feel comfortable. And then that ends up showing on screen. I was assisting Michael Rooney on a job, and I had to teach Kelsey Grammer how to do a time step. So it was like, and he never tap danced. So it was like, okay, how do we approach this? But as long as you can give them, the comfort and ease, and it's like, it's not about being Fred Astaire in this film. This is about, incorporating dance into the story. And as you've explained, it's so much part of that culture in the story. So that's so great that you're able to do that. I know song and dance are an integral part to Zoey's extraordinary playlist and Schmigadoon. So for Christopher and Jillian, tell us a little bit about that process, working with the director. And even if you want to talk about bringing actors in that have the experience of dance and musical theater.
Go for it, Christopher.
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give these ladies a break.
Yeah, it was a kind of a dream job in a way, to get to work on TV, but pull from the roots of like Broadway and the golden age. And so much of it was just baked into my DNA at that point. So, and I was just loving just parroting all of those, I say parroting, but at the same time, it was such a beautiful experience to get to honor all of my heroes by doing all of these numbers, to show a little Agnes, to show a little Michael Kidd, to show a little Anna White, to show, like, to be able to take their world and their styles and kind of go like, put them in a blender and like have this be our world was such a special experience. And then, in terms of like working with the actors, what was so great is they were all, some were primarily from Broadway, some were primarily from TV. So they had all different skill sets. And I think, it's like everyone's saying, it's just getting a little bit of that trust and knowing that you're going to make them look good no matter what. And I always say, my big thing is I never go nuts about steps. I'm not a steps person. I want the steps to look great but I want and tell the story, but it is about telling the story. So the first thing I say to any actor, especially if they're not a dancer, is I will change anything. I'm not, you don't have to do that time step. You don't have to do that thing. you know, there are a million ways to tell a story. So let's tell it in a way that makes you feel comfortable, in a way that then you can act on top of those steps that make you feel great. So, and there was a lot of that in the show, because there were, you know, you have like Ariana DeBose, and you have Kristen Chenoweth, and you have Jane Krakowski, and then you have other members of the cast who may not have felt as comfortable dancing. So, and then it was literally playing to all of their strengths. And, you know, and like, speaking of, like, you know, Kristen Chenoweth, the day, you know, when we were doing Tribulation, you know, it was like a 5-minute oneer. And, you know, and the reason I was able to do the show was Cinco, that you brought it up. He saw No Dames from Hail Caesar, and he was like, that's what I want for the show. He's like, I want it that old school, like really long takes. I don't want to do a lot of editing. I want it to feel classic, and like as many, you know, as long of shots as possible. And so and in Tribulation, it's such a feat, just that she's like having to rattle off those words and do all, you know, like basically Trouble from Music Man. And I was like, oh, this would be like a great oneer just to pull off this feat. And then the day we were talking about it in pre-production, it was like, oh, Kristen Chenoweth's going to be Margaret. And I was like, oh, we're doing it. I was like, because I was like, she's going to do it. I was like, she is going to pull this off, and she is going to nail it. And she did it she got it in the first take. I mean, she literally did it in the first take. We got 2 for safeties, but it was like, we planned the whole day for it. And she was like, she's like, just, you know, did it. And I was like, well, there you go. But it's that kind of thing where it's like you take the performer, and you kind of, you pull their strengths, and, you know, and she knew the second I told her, you know, and again, it's about storytelling. It's like, this is why. It's because you're trying to capture this town. You're trying to, you know, to put them under your spell, and to, like, you know, and she got it, and she was like, let's do it. So she awesome. It was a blast to collaborate on that.
And it's so great. You mentioned that, to be able to pay tribute to older choreographers that were influences, but still create your own style or mark with your own choreography. So that's amazing, that, especially on that show. Let me ask, how much allowance or leeway did the director allow you on the musical numbers?
A lot, to be honest. I mean, Barry Sonnenfeld was so incredibly collaborative. I mean, he couldn't have been kinder to work with. And so basically, and it was, you know, I'm sure most of us did it. It was during the pandemic. So we had like 8 people in the yoga studio with like masks and shields, and, you know, we're trying to, like, you know, figure out numbers with 60 people in them. And it was, I mean, we look back on it now, and we just giggle looking at the previs, because it's just, I don't know how he could even understand what we were trying to do, although he did. But he was like, just go for it. He's like, go, you know, do what you want to do. I'll edit and I'll note it and everything. And it was kind of the perfect marriage, because Cinco Paul, who wrote the show and did all the music and lyrics, he is such a lover of musical theater and the golden age and all of those classics, but Barry wasn't. So it was great, because he was like a perfect guide. So like, I would try to throw in a reference, and he'd be like, I don't know if I get that. And I'm like, that's absolutely fair. And I don't want the audience to feel excluded either. So how can I get that joke, or how can I get that reference or style or whatever, but make it feel, you know, that it's good for everyone. So he was a really, really incredible collaborator on the show. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful to him for his input and his help.
That's awesome, because it shows and it makes production that much better when the director allows you to sort of take over. To Jillian, I'm going to ask that same thing, but now you're working with a co-choreographer, your co-choreographer, so that adds another eye or voice in that. So how does that work with 2 choreographers and a director?
Well, so, I mean, to kind of like wrap a couple things in. So Zoey's Extraordinary Christmas is a feature-length film that's a continuation of the first 2 seasons of Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist.
Right.
And what was super cool is that the director for Zoey's Extraordinary Christmas, Richard Shepard, was the pilot director for our very first episode. So, but he only did the pilot. So then to like wrap back around after 100+ musical numbers later that we did over the 2 seasons was like kind of a funny and wonderful treat, and a lot of trust, so Richard really trusted Mandy, trusted our team, trusted me, and so that it already like lends itself to big leaps, right, and that trust is there. So I would say, in Zoey's Extraordinary Christmas, there are 14 musical moments. So
Wow.
having being co-choreographers really showed up in a lot of different ways. As it could be making steps together, guiding the whole thing together. You take that number, I take this number, I'll take this. We can collaborate on kind of camera path and suggestion. But it was a huge feat. So, all hands on deck in a sense. And what is, I think, really special about Zoeys in general, and the language of dance on Zoeys, is that when dance shows up, a big part of the camera language actually is oneers. We did a lot of them, so that because the way dance is happening in the show is just happening, well, at least in the first season, only Zoey can see it. So how do we, it was always the goal, and like from day one when creating the pilot, which was Mandy, the show creator, Austin Winsberg, and Richard, like really talking about how when the musical moments happen, how does it feel magical, different than normal life, and what are the different ways we can show that? And so how, the camera then, would fold into oneers, long shots would feel different than the scene work, so to kind of lend itself again to the heightened moment of dance. And so it was nice to kind of, when Richard, the director, jumped back in, again, so much later, to like still be working in that language, but also kind of sharing with him how it had evolved, as well as all the actors over 2 seasons, like how they've evolved, in just how what they're capable of. And, also all of those numbers, conditioning them, they're ready for long takes because they know that's kind of what we do on the show. And one of our numbers that we're nominated for it's not the longest oneer that we ever did on the show, but it is one of the second longest with the most amount of people that we ever used on the show. And again, the only way I think that was possible is with like the trajectory of practice for actors, for the dancers in the Vancouver community to know like that's what we do on this show. And then like the whole team, like the whole production being ready for like, okay, that's our goal, that's what we're doing, so luckily we had a nice ramp up of 2 seasons to like, okay, like gain the confidence, gain skills that everyone is on board for those really challenging shots, and know that we can do it. So
that's awesome. It is so interesting, and as you are part of that process, it's always so exciting. It continues to be. I find on these shows, and then someone gives you something that, oh wow, now this person adds another element. And I'm going to take a little left turn and get a little esoteric. I want to ask, how has dance and choreography influenced other parts of your life outside of the working world? Jillian?
Oh man, I'm like thinking very immediately to like where I am right now, where I'm like, I would say it's like the mashup of organizational skills, being able to talk to people, being able to coordinate many things at once. It's these things extend into every part of my life, so even like being home right now with my parents, like helping like reorganize like how the days are going, coordinate with the animals, bring in a sibling, like and I feel it's such a gift that you maybe don't consciously think how that's gonna like permeate, but it permeates how you move through the world,
It's
how
true.
you can coordinate, communicate, share, direct, respond, like think quickly, be on your feet, be ready to adapt.
Christian, how about you? Any to add to that?
Funny, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I don't really know if I can delineate dance from my life. It's it's so ingrained in all of us. I think if I were to pinpoint things that I do think it's made me used to rigor in my life. It's made me used to discipline. It's made me used to being systematic. It's made me used to thinking fast, working fast. It's also, I think about my teachers. And I think a big part of my life is teaching. So it's like, what I have, you've got to go, okay, you take this now. So it's, working with kids. And so our community is it's like, my mother always said, you guys all hug one another all the time. And I never thought about it. I didn't think it was such a weird thing how when we all see one another, we hug one another.
Right.
I mean, I know with my friends. So I think it's about that, think about giving back or I think it's the idea of giving back because eventually I can't do it. So there's not a delineation with dance in my life. I think it's done everything good for me. Yeah. It's been it's my first love.
Very, very heartfelt. Yeah. Christopher, we knew it coming to you.
I think it's, it's interesting, but I mean, because again, I'll sound like a broken record too. I think dance is so a part of me. It's like my whole life that there probably isn't a moment that my brain isn't thinking of something, it's always going. Like if I see something on the street or if I walk by something, I'm like, oh, that'd make a great, but it's hard not to just have that be a part of just the world now, because you're always inspired by something or an event or walk by a shop window or anything. Like anything could be a good idea or so. And I think the thing that has changed, especially during the pandemic, was I think the Schmigadoon experience, because there's literally a packing box here. We just wrapped on season 2, so I'm leaving tomorrow. but I think, and it's just like it gets emotional because I feel, it's when not only, I think I used to take for granted the just kind of like walking around, in my head, doing my thing, getting prepared, being, like walking in the room with ideas for people to try out, blah, blah, blah. You have your, your method and everything like that. And I think when we shot the first season in such unbelievable conditions, I mean, it made me appreciate the whole process so much more. Just in terms of I couldn't even see the dancers' faces, and this is half the story, when they're performing, this is half the story. So I'm working with people and you're only seeing this for weeks at a time. They can't touch each other. They had to partner and take breaks every 5 minutes and sanitize and all this stuff, I think, and to watch everyone, not just the dancers, but just the crew and everyone come together in that way to make this piece of art that we hopefully will all be proud of. Well, I'm proud of it for sure. But I mean, but to watch that, I think it's completely changed my kind of perspective about it all. I still go in with the same kind of but coming back this season, it felt like family, and it felt like it was just a different experience. I was just grateful in so many more ways than I normally am. And it was a really special time.
I love to hear you say that. And I know all of us, if life could be a musical, the world would be a better place, right? It ends up being such a happy
I'd be more than happy to live in Schmigadoon. I always say it's hard to leave. It really is hard to leave both seasons. It's hard to walk out of that door for sure.
End of the season. So we're coming to a close, and we have a boiler question that we ask a lot on our panels. What's one piece of advice you would give to aspiring performers? And you can take this anyway, maybe how one can best present their work if they don't know you, or something to keep people going, or just starting out, or people in the middle of their careers where they're kind of lost, or however you want to take that. Does anyone want to jump in and volunteer first?
I'll jump in. I usually have two pieces two pieces of advice that I always try to give if I'm doing like master class or something is, one is not to take anything personally. You know, we're all individuals. We all have something special to give. Like we, no matter what, like we all are unique individuals. We all are, like, as long as you love it, you know, like keep at it, because there will be a time when that right thing will come along and you're going to meet that right person that sees something in you. So as long as you love it, just keep at it, because it like I always say, like when I was a dancer, I just, there were so many times when if I didn't get something, I would feel like, oh, I was bad that day, or, oh, you know, and then now that I'm on this side of the table, I'm like, oh, well, most of it was cast from a workshop, so we only needed two. Or, oh, you know, we had this partner, and so the other dancer can't be that much taller because of the, like, there are so many reasons why a puzzle fits together the way it does that performers sometimes don't know. So, and I will walk down the street and tell someone, if I run into them in New York, I'll be like, you are amazing, and this is why. Like, I'll just be honest about it, because I was like, people need to know that it's not, it's 90%, well, it's never personal. And then the second piece of advice I usually give is be prepared as you can possibly be. If you're going into to audition for something, go, like, do your research, know who you're going to be dancing for, look at the period, look at the style, dress as appropriately as you can. If you have to sing a song, make sure you have a couple in your book that you know and feel comfortable with. If you have sides and they're going to ask you to read sides, look them over at least so you feel comfortable. But just so that when you're in the room, you are present, you are completely present, you've done your homework. And then when you leave the room, you feel that you've done the best you can possibly do, and then leave it in the room. Because at that point, there's not there, like, then the chips fall as they will. But I always say, like, just as long as you're prepared, as long as you feel prepared, then, you know, that's all you can do.
Well said. Well said. Christian, do you want to jump in?
I am a big advocate for education. And when I say that, I mean it's not always higher education, but it is being prepared for the industry that you want to get into. And in saying that, I think for a lot of performers, there are times when I was just talking to a young performer the other day, and she was getting depressed because of another job wasn't right there. And for me, it's been the in-betweens, the times that I've had the lulls, that I've been getting more skills. So I think knowing that it doesn't end when you start working, that you have to continue to improve in your craft and keep growing. My mother always said, and I say this a lot, when you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. Mm-hmm. So when you think you know everything there is to know, you rot. So I think stay green and keep learning. And I think a big saving grace for me is, and it's not for everyone, I'm just saying, they say believe in yourself. I have a belief in something greater than me. So you have to love yourself, as corny as it may sound, but there will be a lot of no's and and I think being prepared for that and having that, not letting anybody put that fire out that we all have that brought us in this business, because there's going to be things, like Chris said, that you're not going to get, and you've got to keep that fire, that tenacity. So finding things that you love and inspiration that will keep you going in the times where you don't have that A+ job. So education and, you know, ultimately finding that inspiration to keep yourself going.
Awesome. And Jillian, since you started off, I'd love to round out with you.
I actually, kind of in the vein of what Christian is saying, I'm like, man, something I say often is keep seeking the things that get you excited and get you curious, you know, and sometimes those things will align, I think, with work. But, you know, as long as there's always a fuel of, like, okay, being honest with, like, the things that make you light up, and you keep going after them unapologetically, especially when times are hard, or someone has said, like, no, you're not right. You're like, well, I am doing this, and this makes me you know, just makes me feel jazzed. And to be just, I would say, tenacious about just to keep pushing when after and going towards the things that excite you, because they do end up lining up even if it feels far at first. So
well said. Thank you for the words of wisdom, all of you. And this was so much fun. And on behalf of myself and the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, we want to thank all our viewers for tuning in, and to all our special guests today for sharing your expertise, your advice, your craft, and all these wonderful experiences, which I know will help the future dancers and choreographers of tomorrow. Congratulations to you all on your Emmy nominations. Keep up the great work and inspiration to the dance community. And finally, best of luck at the Emmys. Even though you are all already winners. If you're interested in programming like this from the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel as well. And on your next gig or wherever you can, as I do a little bit on every job I do, make sure to give to the foundation, because next time it may be you there helping. So thank you for your support, and keep on dancing, everyone.